Before I get into this video, I have a serious question for you guys. Let's get into some real talk here. For you Nintendo fans, you Switch owners, are you sick of winning yet? Like, literally, are you feeling ill? I feel like my body, it might not be able to handle any more win. Can you OD from too much win? Is that a thing? Because, if so, I'm getting kind of worried about it. Anyway, last month, I praised Nintendo for reaching a major milestone with the Switch, selling through 10 million units of the new system. And just a few days ago, Nintendo tweeted out yet another milestone. The Switch has become the fastest selling system in the US of all time for its first 10 months on the market. At this point, no one can doubt the system's success, obviously. Well, no one with a brain. There will always be some people claiming doom and gloom for Nintendo. But with all these milestones being reached, perhaps the biggest one possible that we might consider is, can the Switch go on to outsell the lifetime sales of the Wii? Sure, it's still very early to make any concrete predictions, I'll give you that, but the pace this system is setting in terms of sales makes it worth discussing at this time, in my opinion. We can start talking about it because, to sell through over 100 million systems is no easy feat. The Big N will have to find ways to maintain that steady level of sales, so how can they? Well, one thing I always mention, obviously, the games. You're not going to keep hype alive without them. And we know there's some big ones on the way. Pokemon, for instance, will certainly push sales of several million systems. Games like Pokemon need to be heavily stressed because you need titles that aren't only great, but ones with mass appeal. If you look at the success of the Wii, it's clear that a lot of that success was based on the system's ability to draw in a much more casual crowd. People that wouldn't even consider themselves gamers were brought in by the allure of motion controls, allowing the system to cast an insanely wide net on consumers. However, this audience, it's long gone. As more systems came out with more motion control options, the Kinect, PlayStation Move, etc., no one seemed to care anymore. Not saying that motion controls are dead, calm down. I've really started to notice when I bash motion controls that there are fanboys, apparently, of motion controls in general, which I'd never have guessed was even a thing. But they will defend them as the ultimate gaming innovation until the grave, for some reason. But as far as using them as a hook to get in that casual crowd, that's over with. And for the Switch to do these massive numbers, they will have to continue to pull in at least some of the more casual people, at least some of the more casual Nintendo players. Perhaps people who haven't purchased a Nintendo console in a long time, years maybe. So those games with the mass appeal are great. And I think we saw that this year a little bit. Games like Mario Kart, and Zelda being there right out of the gate in year one played a huge role, I think, in the success we've seen so far. Because again, yes, you have the hardcore, the die-hard Nintendo fans. We're going to buy anything they put the Nintendo logo on. But you need to be able to get those casual consumers. They walk by, see a character like Mario, and are like, oh, yeah, I know him. I like those games. Maybe I'll check this out. Also, bundles for those big games. The power of the bundle can't be understated. For games like that Pokemon title, again, I'm just going to keep hammering that one. Nintendo would be foolish not to have a specific bundle. Get some Pokemon decals on the system itself and the Joy-Cons. Make the Joy-Cons exclusive to that system bundle. It's always better to make things simpler for the consumer. For people wanting to pick up a Switch for Pokemon, which I know there are still a lot of you people out there. There's a lot of people holding out on the Switch, waiting for that Pokemon game, and as soon as it comes out, they're going to be at the store making their purchase. So make it easy to have it be a one-time purchase. You get the game and the system all together, you walk into the store, you buy one item, you go. Always making things easier for the consumer makes it easier to make the sale. Now, this isn't going to be popular when the system is so new to talk about, but an upgraded version of the console will probably be necessary at some point. Keep the pitchforks down, at some point down the line. I know, You don't want to hear that your brand new piece of tech will be outdated someday, but it happens. And I'm not saying an upgrade to replace the system, but something to offer a more powerful option for core users. This would also likely result in a major price cut for the standard version of the system, as we've seen with the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X. Once you lower the price, again, maybe put together some cheaper bundles, you cast a much wider net on the consumers. Once this thing inevitably gets to like $200 with a good game bundled with it, I'm not saying this will be the near future. Again, calm down. Your Switch is still worth $300. But when we get to that point, maybe parents with, say, 2 kids can buy one for each of them, rather than just one to share. Couples, friends, I feel like are good with the whole handheld thing, passing it down. You know, it always seems like a trend with handheld systems, right? You know, the new one comes out, and the person who is a more hardcore user passes it down to the person who's more casual in gaming so that they can buy, you know, that newest version. It always seems to happen with handheld systems, right? They always find someone to pass it on to. Like, I know a lot of people with the 3DS, myself included. When the XL came out, they passed down their original version. And then again, when the new Nintendo 3DS came out, and I see that being a trend for the Switch as well, if we see some improved hardware. Perhaps even with those bundles, like I mentioned. Like, if you're a hardcore Pokemon fan, you're a hardcore Nintendo fan, you probably already have a Switch, but maybe when they announce that, you know, kick-ass Pokemon bundle and the system's all decked out and looks cool, maybe you're going to be interested in perhaps buying that one and passing your current Switch down to somebody else. And obviously that 3DS model is more so what they're going to want to follow, as the 3DS has been extremely successful for Nintendo as well. And that system had a rocky start, if you remember. And that had a lot to do with stuff like the games not really being there as much from the beginning, kind of some problems with the 3D tracking, I guess. You know, the 3D was supposed to be the big selling point, and I feel like in the end, most people don't even really use the 3D functions. But clearly, the Switch has a leg up on the 3DS in terms of it actually had a strong start. So if they can mirror some of the positive stuff, the things that worked for the 3DS, as I mentioned, various iterations that resulted in some price drops in that, moves that can get multiple systems in each house, I think that is important. If you have the designated gamer leader of the family essentially playing on the Switch, the hand-me-down strategy tends to be a big part of these handhelds. So I think you want to try to replicate that if you can. As far as what improvements I'd like to see if we got a new system, a new model, obviously more power to run the game smoother. I don't like the idea of splintering the player base with exclusive games to a more powerful system. If it can't run well, at least on both, I don't think you should do it. I don't want to see like, oh, Grand Theft Auto 5, but on the new Nintendo Switch. I think you're going to piss off more people than you please. And in general, with what we've seen from the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X, it tends to be a very niche crowd that's looking to upgrade at least early on to a new system. Obviously, the 3DS, the XLs, the new Nintendo 3DSs have all been around much longer, so they've sold well. But at the beginning, it's going to be a very niche amount of people that are going for the more expensive, the more powerful system. Judging just by the numbers, people seem to be more content with a standard version of a console and then more money in their pocket. But I think the trend, like we've seen, of just adding better performance is fine. Beyond that, battery life, I think, would be a big selling point of a new system. If you could get it up to 4+ hours or so when playing the more intensive games, that would be great. As well as additional storage. This 32 gig deal already, I've said it in the past, it doesn't cut it. When you have single games requiring additional storage than what comes built in on the system, it shouldn't fly. I always see the comments, oh, well, I needed to get more storage for my Xbox One or my PS4. Not after one game. Not after one game you didn't. And I do feel like that storage aspect is going to be a big turnoff once we start getting in those more casual consumers, because they're not going to understand until they're met with the messages when they put in the game, like, oh, add additional storage to, play all the features or whatever. They're not going to pay attention to the box and all, like, oh, the message on box. They're not reading the box. They're buying the game and putting it in. So yeah, that's one thing I really hope they start doing as we get, newer Switch iterations, start bumping up that level of storage. And basically, that's it. Those are my thoughts. Obviously, the Switch has had a strong start, but to keep up the momentum, they're going to need great games with mass appeal. Don't forget that mass appeal. And I also believe they're going to have to mimic some of the tactics from the 3DS, which may not be as popular with some of you. But as I stated a few times, I think getting multiple of these systems in single-family homes is key if you want to hit that 100 million. And you'll probably need multiple iterations and increasing price drops for that to happen. With all things considered, with the possibilities that are out there, I'd say there is a good chance that the Switch may actually beat those Wii sales. Still, only time will tell for sure. And with that, this video is a wrap. Let me know what moves you think could help the Switch surpass those Wii sales in the comments. As always, I'm John Zakari, and thanks for watching.